Welcome to Dad Perfect, a podcast for busy dads and our favorite heroes, the wives who stand with them. Dads who understand that investing in your family is the greatest investment you can ever make. Dads who are ready to dig deep and become the perfect dad for your family. To become Dad Perfect. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Perfect podcast. I am David Rasmussen, your host. Thank you for joining me today, and I want to welcome all of you who are listening for the first time. As always, I want to extend a special welcome to the wives who are joining us. As fathers, we know that we are nothing without you. Today, we will be introducing the principle, Be Present, which is the fourth of our 9 core principles of perfectly devoted dads. We often hear that love is spelled T-I-M-E, time. Time is a finite resource, of which there never seems to be enough, especially for a busy dad. Time is difficult to come by. I always get a kick out of the question, what do you like to do with your free time? Free time, really, like as busy dads, husbands, employees, and entrepreneurs, it can be difficult to even remember the last time we had free time. It's easy to feel like there isn't enough time in the day to do everything that we need to get done. So when someone like me gets on this podcast and says, in order for you to be a good dad, you need to spend more time with your family, it is natural to respond with incredulity and with cynicism. And I totally get it. I've been where you are. As a matter of fact, I still am. Far too often, there just isn't enough time in the day to do everything and to be everything. In episode 1, I shared a personal example of what happened to me about 8 years ago, an experience when I wasn't there, when I wasn't present. As a brief recap, my teenage son had called me to tell me of an amazing experience that he had just had. And normally I would have been happy for him, but this time it made me very sad. I was sad because this was an experience that I should have been at. I should have been there with him, but I wasn't because I was driving to work. At the time, I was commuting 4.5 hours each way, each week, between my 2 stores. And I would often leave on a Sunday evening, return Thursday night, late at night after the kids had gone to bed. And then Friday, I would work at my store all day, and Saturday do the same. And then get home and have a few hours Saturday evening with my family. And then on Sundays, I would serve almost all day in my church, leaving again Sunday evening to go north to my other store. So you can see there was almost no time when I was actually physically with my family during the week. And I maintained this schedule for nearly 2 years, and it was brutal. It was brutal on me and on my family. We did our best to stay connected while I was gone. We would FaceTime almost every evening. We would say family prayers together over the phone as often as we could. And my kids were great to call me and to share their lives with me. They really tried hard to make me a part of their lives. But the reality, it wasn't working. And that phone call from my son was the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back. And I knew that I could not do this anymore. Prior to the phone call, not too long before the phone call from my son, I remember I was looking through some photos of our family of the past year with my wife. And I remember commenting to her, I don't remember this. I'd look at a photo and say, I don't remember what was happening in this photo. And that was unfortunately the case with many of those photos. And I remember her saying very lovingly, but it was hard to hear, but it was correct. She said, it's because you weren't here. And that phrase, it hurt, not because she didn't hurt me, but just because I knew it was true. It really stung. I knew she was right. I was not there. I wasn't there for my family. And I was talking with my kids. We were connecting on phone calls. And I really focused on them when I was home. But the truth of the matter was this, that I wasn't there. I was not present in their lives. I was doing all this work for them. I was working for them. I was doing this driving. I'd started this business because I wanted to provide for my family. And I really did. And I loved my family. They were really the reason that I was doing all of this. They were everything to me. And I knew that they were more important than work. But I also knew that I needed to provide for them, to make money, which at this point in the business, we were not doing. The business was not succeeding. It was a real struggle. So to summarize the situation of what I was in about 8 years ago, is I was gone almost all the time. I was missing important moments in my family, both big and little, for my children and with my wife. All of my relationships in my family were strained. My business was not succeeding. We were almost out of money. And so basically, I was failing. In my perspective, I was failing at all aspects of being a father. And this was a real turning point for me. I had to make a decision because what I was doing was not working. And I was at the risk of losing what was most important to me, which was my family. And so we started to change. We made a change. And this is when I really started to focus on being present with my family. And the first episode, I explained more about what we did to make changes. But in this podcast, I specifically want to focus on the things that I did to be present with my family, to be there, right? Because it's not all about time. Again, we don't have time to just spare. Right? We can't just go make more time and pull it out of thin air and say, okay, I'm just going to spend all my time with my family and be at work all of the time. It doesn't work that way. So there are some specific things that I implemented in my life. These are things that I discussed with my wife and my children. We were all part of this, and we have implemented them over the past 8 years, and they've worked very well. So I want to share them with you. So the first element of being present is to plan. You have to make a plan. So we started to have what we call family councils, where we would bring the whole family together and we would make plans. We would plan the summer. We would plan the week. We would plan, just schedules. We took the time to talk and we would plan. And that made a huge difference. And we would do that as often as possible. It wasn't weekly, it was as needed. But we brought the family together and we talked with each other and we planned with each other. I'd ask each of our children, what do you have coming up this week or this month or this summer, just depending on what we were looking at. And we would put it on the calendar and we would discuss what needed to happen as a family to make sure that we were accomplishing what needed to be accomplished with that event and who was involved. And so it was on our schedule. And then my wife and I would do the same thing. Not with the whole family, just the two of us. And we would talk about our own schedules, but then we would talk about the schedules and the planning that we had done with the whole family and what we specifically needed to do as a husband and wife to meet those plans. So we would talk about, if we couldn't both be there, who was going to go, who was going to watch the kids, how are we going to balance this and make sure that these events and the needs of our children were being met and that we were there, right? So we'd have these family councils with the whole family, and then we would have what we called, probably not the appropriate name, this is my business world coming into it, but executive councils, right? My wife and I being the executive council. And then we figured out how to schedule it, right? Using digital calendars, sometimes paper calendars. We found that sometimes paper calendars worked out well, but we wrote it all down. We made sure that we knew where we needed to be and when we needed to be there and which kids needed to be there as well and how we were going to make it happen. So we just took the time to figure it out, right? To schedule it, to put it on the calendar. It's amazing the difference it makes when you just put it on the calendar for your family. All of the little events, and my calendar is packed full, and I have to turn off some calendars so I can see what's going on, but it's there, and that's important because otherwise I forget. I'm not good at remembering things, so I have to get it down. I have to write it down. With this plan, no matter how hard we tried to plan it all out, things changed, right? And so we had to learn how to be customizable, and it was different for every child. My oldest son is very calendar planning organized, right? He does very well in that world. My daughter is more play it by ear, and she works that way. And so we've had to learn how to customize for each of our children, and as well as know what each of the children need in our plan. Which children need us to be there? Which ones need us to be supportive, but maybe don't necessarily be to every event, right? So those are some things we talk about in other principles as well, but learning how to know what each of the children need and then customizing that plan for each of the children. And then when it's all said and done, you have to follow through on the plan, right? When you have the plan, when you have the schedule, you've got to do it. You've got to follow through. Now, it doesn't always work out. So that brings us to the second principle, which is you have to communicate. You have to be together, right? You have to listen to each other and you have to engage with each other. This means more than just talking, right? This isn't just scheduling time when you're going to have a talk with each other or be in the car and talk. Now that's good, but it's more about being present, being there, being in the moment with each other, okay? And really listening to what your children have to say. So these could be moments that are planned. These could be moments that are not planned. For example, one of the plans that my wife and I talk about is we always try to be home at the crossroads. Okay, so what that means is when our kids are leaving for school or when they're coming home from school or coming home from a date or anytime, but when they're coming and going, being there for the crossroads and taking the time to listen to what they're saying, listen to their words, listen to their body language, to engage with each other in these conversations, and really pay attention to what they are trying to communicate to me, to us as the parents, and understand what it is, and then give them what they need. As a husband, as a man, we are very quick. It's kind of in our nature to want to solve the problems. And sometimes that's not what they need. Sometimes they just need someone to listen. Right? Sometimes they need someone who can just give them a hug or to give them encouragement. My wife's family has something that I've really learned to appreciate. And they came up with a family mascot, family bird, if you want to call it that, the Canadian goose. And the reason they made that the family mascot is because of the geese fly in a V, right? They fly in a V and they support each other as they fly in a V. And they honk to give each other encouragement while they're in this flying V. And the honking has been something that's really kind of stuck with their family, that they do, and they honk for each other. So when someone has a big event or something coming up, they will just say, I'm honking for you, right? I'm honking. And that honk is an act of support, of encouragement, that I'm here, right? So this communication, this second element of being present, just listening, it's more than talking. It's really engaging. It's sharing your feelings, sharing your emotions. It's sharing support. It's honking for each other. It's being there. And in those moments, when you establish that culture in your family, you can then start to be present when you're not together, right? So when you honk for someone that's across the country via text, it has some meaning behind it because it had meaning when you were together. So this communication is so much more than just talking and listening, but it's that emotional support. It's really being there for each other. And there's so much more we could go into on that, but in this podcast, we don't have time to dig deep. That will be another one. So the first element, just quick review here. The first element of being present is to plan. The second element is to communicate. Now let's go on to the third element, which is to focus. Focus is really important. When you are together, it's important to be together. Try not to multitask. Men, we are bad at it. I don't know why. Something the way we're wired, women seem to do it better than we do. My encouragement to you as a dad is don't do it. Try not to multitask. When you are together, focus on being together. Focus on your children. Focus on your wife. Let them know that there is nobody in that moment more important than them. And this is kind of why planning is so important, because it's difficult to just shut out everything in your life on the spur of the moment. And so when you plan, you can then, of course, plan to focus, right? You can make sure everything else is done or at least set aside. And you can focus on your children in the moment that you need to be present. One tip that I've heard that's worked for me is if you have to, take out your phone or a piece of paper, anything you have, just take a moment, take 1 minute and write down everything that's on your mind. You don't have to do a lot of detail, just write it down so you can remember it and then put it away. The idea is that now it's not on your mind anymore. Now you can focus and you can come back to that list later, pick it up and re-engage with those things that you were thinking about. That's a very simple, helpful way to get that out of the way. Focus on what you are doing, where you are, who you are with, and be together. You know, when you're in a meeting or when you're with someone else, I mean, just think about it. How do you feel when you're trying to talk to someone or you're giving a presentation, you're trying to teach something that's important to you, and you can see that other person or the boardroom, whatever it is, that there's someone who is not engaged. They're more concerned about what's on their social media or texts that are coming in or something else. You don't like it. It makes you feel like you're not important in some ways, or what you're teaching is not being heard, that you're not doing a good job. When you do that to your children, they feel the same way. It sends the wrong message. It says, I care more about whatever's on this phone than I do about you. So when you are with your kids, with your wife, it's very important to focus. Focus on what they're saying. Don't multitask. I make the mistake of doing it more often than I should. But when I do focus in and I try to do it as much as possible, it's always so much better. I'm much more present and the experience is significantly better. The relationships are better. So now the fourth element is to be flexible. Kids come home late. If you have any children who are teenagers, who are dating or hanging out with their friends, it's tough. They come home late. And if your plan is to be there at the crossroads, then they come home, that means you stay up until they come home. I am always amazed at the conversations I have with my children when I stay up for them and they come home late and I'm awake and I ask them, how was your date? How was your party? How was your whatever it was, right? Tell me about it. And they know that we're there. And it's not just me. My wife will stay up late. And sometimes we have big events coming in the next day and she'll have to go to bed so she can get up early, or vice versa. I have to go to bed. And so she stays up late, but we do this together. And sometimes we can plan for it, sometimes we can't. That's where being flexible is important. That I would love for my kids to come home at 9 o'clock every night so I can go to be in bed by 10 and wake up early and do that, but they don't. So I have to be flexible in order to be there for them. I try to help them understand why it's important for them to come home early, but they still don't. And that's just one example of coming home. Things happen in our lives, things happen in their lives, and it's important to be flexible. I want to share one example of this that just recently happened in our home. My wife is a producer. She produces live theater, and she has a new play that just is live now on a theater. And it's in a theater in St. Louis, which is quite a ways away from our home. So nobody has been able to see it except for her. And I flew out there to see it with her. But my kids haven't seen it. And my wife wanted to share it with our kids. And there was a recording of the play that she got. And so she wanted to share this recording. My wife wanted to share this recording with the family on Monday night. And my daughter got invited to go out to dinner with some friends. And she really wanted to do that. And so let her do that. My wife wanted my daughter to come home earlier and be there so we could all watch this play as a family. This was something that was important to my wife. But my daughter didn't quite know the plan. She didn't know how early we were going to watch it or anything like that. So we watched the play with our kids, with the kids that were home. They went to bed. And then later, my daughter came home. And it would have been very easy to be like, hey, you missed it. You weren't there. We saw this great play and you missed it. I'm sorry, daughter. Tough. But she wanted to watch it. My daughter wanted to watch it. So we had a choice. Do we kind of stick it to her? Do we hold to our guns just like, hey, you need to learn a lesson. You need to be home. We didn't feel that was the right thing to do at this point. So we stayed up late. We watched it twice. We had the experience with the younger kids and then with my daughter. And it worked out great. We got to bed later than we expected, but the reality was it was more important to be with our daughter, to have her share that experience with my wife, that they could both talk about it, and to have my daughter say to my wife she loved the play and share that experience, to be present in that moment for my wife and my daughter. That's being flexible. Being flexible requires sacrifice, and it's important to do that. And it's hard to do, but it's important to be flexible and sacrifice to be present when our kids and our wives need it. The next and final element of being present is more something you can do yourself. It's in marketing, you know the term keeping things top of mind, that when you have a product that you're marketing, that you just want it to be top of mind so that when the customer is ready to buy said item, they think of yours first and they make the purchase. It's the same kind of an idea with your family. You want to keep your family top of mind. When your family is top of mind, you're more aware of what their needs are and you're ready to act and be present for them. So some of the things that I do for my family to keep them top of mind for me is every day I pray for them. I'm a religious person. I pray for them specifically every single day, because to pray for them, I have to take a moment and think about them, right? I have to think about what are their needs, what are their concerns, what do they need help with? And if I do that just for a moment before I say my prayers, it keeps me focused on my family. And then I continue to think about them throughout the day. There have been times when I've set some reminders on my phone to remind me about some of their events and things like that, because I do forget. We get busy, time passes, and we miss things. And so reminders on phones are very helpful to help us think about them throughout the day, especially if there's an event coming up or a special thing that we need to make sure that we are aware of. Maybe it's remember to buy a bouquet of flowers before you go to your daughter's dance concert, because that's a good thing to do as a dad, is to bring your daughter flowers. I'm grateful to my wife because there are many times I have forgotten that and she helps me remember. So reminders, anything you can do to remind you to think about your family throughout the day keeps them top of mind. And then it's helpful to keep a focus of service, right? Think about not just what they're doing, but think about what you can do for them throughout the day. Is there something you can do to help them? It may be something very simple as help them fold their laundry, right? Or take lunch to someone who forgot it at school, right? But be willing to do things for them. And if you're constantly asking yourself, what can I do for my child? Or what can I do for my wife today? Or what can I do for them right now? Maybe you've just got a spare moment. Instead of thinking about going golfing or the basketball game coming up or something else, just take a second and think, is there anything I can do for my wife right now? Is there anything I can do for my children right now? And it may be as simple as a text. Send them a text. Hey, I'm thinking about you. Love you. Have a great day. That is an amazing thing. That does wonders for relationships. Just that simple text. I'm thinking about you. I love you. It's amazing. Try it. You'll like what it does. So those are your in review, the 5 elements of being present that I have implemented in my life, or I work on implementing. Again, not perfect, work on these things. So in review, it is: first, plan; second, communicate; third, focus; 4, be flexible; and 5, keep your family top of mind. Being present is difficult. It's a challenge as a father. We have a lot of things on our plate. There's always something to do. There are always people that need our attention. Work can consume your life if you allow it to do that. It always will demand time, demand energy, demand emotion, demand your mind. If you don't plan to be present, if you don't make it intentional, then it gets pushed aside and you end up doing what I did, which is working for my family, but not being there for my family. So these 5 elements of being present will help you to be there for your family when they need you. I know that you can do this. I know you can as a father. I don't want you to give in to any discouragement or doubt. We are not perfect. No father is perfect. You will not be perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But the key is to not give up. Take these things that I've shared. Use what's working for you. You may already be doing something that's working very well, and that's fantastic if you are. If you're being present in the moment and you've got a plan that's working, keep doing it. I'm excited for you if you are. These principles have helped me in my life. Each day I strive to implement them. They work for me. They are a part of me and my efforts to be the best dad that I can be for my family. And I know they have worked for me. I know they can help you. I want to thank you for listening today. I hope you'll join me in the next episode. We will introduce principle number 5, which is your lighthouse. This is one of my favorite principles. This is where we talk about your relationship with your wife and the love that you share with your wife, and also a little bit about the love that you have and share with your children. And the idea behind lighting your lighthouse is, a lighthouse is founded on rock, a solid foundation, and it is bright and it guides the sailors back to port. And when you have a strong lighthouse, when your relationship with your spouse or your relationship with your children, which is founded on love, is strong, it is like a lighthouse that as your children leave home, just spread their wings and they start to spend more time out of the home, when they know that no matter what happens in their life, they have you. They have you as their father. They have you as a father and a mother, your spouse, that you are always there. You are a strong foundation. You are a guide back to port. It gives them the ability to tackle anything. In the next episode, we will introduce principle number 5, which is light your lighthouse. This is one of my favorite principles. This is where we start talking about your relationship with your wife. So the be present that we talked about today is about your relationship with your children and your wife, kind of relationship with your family in general. Principle number 5, we speak specifically more to your relationship with your wife, where your relationship that you have with your wife is like a lighthouse. It is built on firm foundation that your children, no matter where they are in life, can always look back to as a guide to overcome and help fight through the storms of life. So it's a good, fun principle. I'm excited to share it with you. I hope you will join me, and I hope you've enjoyed listening today. Thank you very much. This has been the Dad Perfect Podcast. Thank you for listening. If you want more, you can get it. More resources, more tips and strategies, more dads and moms sharing experiences, and much more. Simply go to dadperfect.com and sign up. That's dadperfect.com to sign up for more. Until next time, remember, you are the perfect dad for your family. You are Dad Perfect.